Campaign emails are leaked to the media. The campaign chairman says the FBI is looking into a direct Russian connection to that. Meanwhile, Russia's president and foreign secretary are mockingly dismissing the Obama administration claims and threats as, quote, hysterics and ridiculous. Correspondent Kevin Cork is at the White House tonight.
Proportional. That's the word Obama administration officials are using to describe the potential U.S. response to Russia's hacking activities, said to include a trove of email leaks, including another nearly 1,200 today posted by the website WikiLeaks, targeting the American political system and, most notably, Hillary Clinton's campaign, Democratic Party leadership, and the Clinton State Department. Current Secretary of State John Kerry said the Russians should and ultimately will pay for what they've done, saying the U.S., quote, will and can respond in ways that we choose to at the time of our choice. Experts say that could include economic sanctions or other punitive actions designed to deter other bad actors from mimicking Moscow. White House officials today echoed the threat.
The kind of proportional response that the president would consider is not necessarily the kind of response that we would announce in advance.
It's not just a cyber war that Moscow is waging. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov are also engaged in a PR offensive, each downplaying the Kremlin's suspected role in interfering with the U.S. election.
There
is nothing in the interest of Russia. Hysterics have been whipped up to distract the attention of the American people from the essence of what the hackers released.
Well, it's flattering, of course, to get this kind of attention for a regional power, as President Obama called us some time ago. It has nothing, to be explained by the facts. We have not seen a single fact, a single proof.
Clinton campaign chair John Podesta says the FBI is investigating the hack of his emails, as published on WikiLeaks, and suggested Moscow was attempting to tip the political scales Donald Trump's way.
The Russian interference in this election and their apparent attempt to influence it on behalf of Mr. Trump is, I think, should be of utmost concern to all Americans.
Analysts say cyber hacking is merely a new tool and an old KGB tactic.
They're trying to erode trust and undermine confidence in our electoral system. They used to refer to it as kompromat, or compromising information, or maskirovka, deceiving others of their activities. This is part and parcel of what we've seen KGB tradecraft during the Cold War.
Of course, Brett, back in August, you may recall that Sergei Lavrov said that Russia would never interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. But notice he didn't say that today. He said, we did not deny it, but they did not prove it. Perhaps the clearest indication of just who is behind the hacks. Right?
Kevin Cork live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. Catholics and evangelicals are upset tonight over one particular leaked email. It features a top Clinton aide apparently mocking their faith. Senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel is covering the Clinton campaign tonight from Pueblo, Colorado.
In battleground Colorado, Hillary Clinton pushed supporters to get out and register and to turn their ballots in early.
Don't be left out, because we need you. And oh, by the way, if you've got friends in Utah or Arizona, make sure they vote too.
The Clinton campaign is facing new controversy with calls for Communications Director Jennifer Palmieri to resign. In an email exchange from 2011, Center for American Progress senior fellow John Halpin wrote to campaign chairman John Podesta, mocking prominent media moguls for raising their children Catholic. Quote, they must be attracted to the systematic thought and severely backwards gender relations. They must be totally unaware of Christian democracy, Halpin wrote. Podesta didn't respond, but Palmieri did, writing, quote, I imagine they think it is the most socially acceptable, politically conservative religion. Their rich friends wouldn't understand if they became evangelicals. Today on Clinton's plane, Palmieri was asked directly about this latest controversy.
I'm a Catholic. I don't recognize that email that
that we saw. And this whole effort is led by the Russians. We are not going to do any more to comment or aid their efforts.
This is yet another concern for Catholics with the Clinton campaign after her running mate, Tim Kaine, a Catholic, changed his public position on the Hyde Amendment restricting the use of taxpayer dollars for abortion services. Catholics make up about 21% of the U.S. population and have significant representation in critical battleground states like Florida, Wisconsin, and Nevada. Today, the Trump-Pence ticket pounced.
These emails are just the latest evidence of the hatred that the Clinton campaign has for everyday faithful Americans.
Men and women of faith, I will tell you, this is a time for action, not essays. And we must roll our sleeves up and be prepared to fight every day for what we believe in.
Moments ago, House Speaker Paul Ryan jumped on this latest Catholic controversy. Ryan calls the Clinton campaign's, quote, disdain for the Catholic faith and Christian evangelicals staggering. Brett?
Mike, thank you. For the first time ever, a Fox News anchor will be moderating a general election presidential debate. Award-winning journalist, host of Fox News Sunday, and our friend, Chris Wallace, widely regarded as really one of the best questioners in the business, will moderate the all-important final debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Tonight, we can tell you the topics Chris has selected. They are debt and entitlements, immigration, economy, Supreme Court, foreign hotspots, and fitness to be president. This make-or-break event, less than 3 weeks before the historic election of 2016, will be held October 19th in Las Vegas. The best place, of course, to watch the first Fox-moderated debate is on Fox News Channel. I'll be hosting Fox News Sunday for Chris this Sunday in Las Vegas, and Chris Wallace will be the power player. Donald Trump is reverting to the same combative, take-no-prisoners style that worked so well for him in the primary campaign. But with less than 4 weeks left until Election Day, can that strategy help him overcome the seemingly nonstop flow of negative news and defections? Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron is with the Trump team tonight in Lakeland, Florida.
In Ocala, Florida, Donald Trump again blasted House Speaker Paul Ryan.
Wouldn't you think that Paul Ryan would call and say, good going, in front of just about the largest audience for a second night debate in the history of the country? There's a whole deal going on. We're going to figure it out. I always figure things out. But there's a whole sinister deal going on.
Trump teed off on his GOP critics and suggested on last night's O'Reilly Factor that the speaker could lose his job.
I wouldn't want to be in a foxhole with a lot of these people, that I can tell you. I would think that Ryan maybe wouldn't be there. Maybe he'll be in a different position.
Citing more hacked emails released by WikiLeaks, Trump slammed Clinton today as a religious bigot for derogatory comments by her staff about Catholics.
They attack Catholics and evangelicals viciously. And that won't be tolerated, but it won't be tolerated by the voters.
Faith politics are playing big in typically conservative red Utah, the state with the nation's highest Mormon population. Trump is now in a three-way tie with Hillary Clinton and Evan McMullin, a Mormon and a Republican turned independent who amounts to a potential Trump spoiler. But today it was Clinton who got the endorsement of the Salt Lake Tribune, concluding she is, quote, the only candidate who comes close to being qualified and fit to be president. Trump's candidacy has Republicans flip-flopping. Nebraska Senator Deb Fischer, having said she would not support Trump after seeing the video of his vulgar comments about women, is a supporter again. Senator John Thune, a member of the GOP leadership, is also back on the Trump train. But Senator Rob Portman of the critical battleground state of Ohio, who's largely kept quiet about Trump, now says he cannot support him. In Lakeland, Florida, Trump suggested if elected, he will reinvestigate the investigation of Clinton's email server.
We are going to investigate this phony investigation. It's a phony investigation.
Trump's also using Clinton's hacked emails to amp up his feisty nationalist America First rhetoric.
These WikiLeaks emails confirm what those of us here today have known all along. Hillary Clinton is the vessel, a corrupt global establishment that's raiding our country and surrendering the sovereignty of our nation.
Trump's threat to imprison Clinton got pulled back today by his campaign manager.
It wouldn't be up to him whether or not she goes to jail. That would have to be fully adjudicated through the regular channels like it would be for anyone else.
And part of Trump's preparation for next week's debate is bashing the Commission on Presidential Debate commissioners. Today he said he found out that former White House Secretary Mike McCurry of the Clinton White House is one of the co-chairmen, and he said he has no respect for the debate commission itself. Earlier this week, Trump called for the resignation of Republican Commissioner Frank Fahrenkopf because he had refused to allow the Clinton accusers in the Trump box so they could get on stage. And he's got some debate prep to do in terms of preparing for Hillary Clinton as well. Brett?
Thanks, Carl. Outside the presidential race on election night, the big story will be the balance of power in the House and the Senate. In recent days, there's been more talk about the House and how many seats Republicans will lose. Right now, it's 246 Republicans to 186 Democrats. There are 3 vacancies. The Democrats have to pick up a net gain of 30 seats in order to take control. Now, there have been a lot of estimates in recent weeks. Cook Political Report says this: Republicans are now well within the reach of holding their November losses under the 13 seats they gained in 2014. So 13 or under is Cook Political Report. But look at this. It's October 4th. That's before the Trump tape came out and before some of the shifts that we've seen. Now, Nancy Pelosi, the House Minority Leader, is sounding more and more confident.
I feel very confident that if the election were held today, we could win it all. But the election isn't today.
We will see. The Fox projection right now is anywhere between 12 and 18 seats. It could shift in the next month before Election Day. If you see a wave, we could see that in the next couple of weeks. That is what we're looking at in the House. Now, in the Senate, you have a majority for Republicans, 54-46. Actually, 44 Democrats and 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. And as we take a look at the map of how it stands tonight, you can see that the red is Republican, the blue is Democrats, the gray is actually, those are states that don't have Senate races this year. Judging by the average of polls tonight and giving the winner even a razor-thin margin in the average of polls, here's what Democrats pick up as of tonight if the election were tonight. They would win in Illinois. Tammy Duckworth would take out the incumbent, Mark Kirk. And also, Evan Bayh would win in Indiana as of tonight. But that is it. That's it for Democrats. And on the Republican side, the one change that they pick up is Nevada. Joe Heck out here. So look at those numbers. 53-47, just a loss of 1. Now that is the question, whether they can hold that. A lot of these races are within the margin of error, including North Carolina, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and right here in Missouri. Missouri Republican Senator Roy Blunt is hanging on to a slim 2-point lead in his race against Democratic Secretary of State Jason Kander. That's according to this, the latest survey from Monmouth out today. Blunt was up 5 points in August. The contest has become pivotal to the Democratic efforts, as you can see, to retake the Senate. Here's correspondent Matt Finn.
How are you doing?
Good, sir. How are you? Missouri's Republican Senator Roy Blunt is under pressure to deliver on Election Day. If Republicans are going to hold their Senate majority, he needs to win.
My opponent's a guy who's run for 3 offices now in 7 years. He's clearly focused much more on getting a job than he is on doing the job.
Blunt's opponent is the self-described Washington outsider, Democrat Jason Kander, who just this week was ranked by the Capitol Hill newspaper Roll Call as the top candidate to shift power in the Senate.
Senator Blunt wakes up every day thinking about what he can do for special interests that day, and I'm a veteran of the war in Afghanistan who has demonstrated the ability to work to get things done.
Most analysts and polls initially suggested Blunt was the clear frontrunner, but now Real Clear Politics lists Missouri as a toss-up state, with Blunt ahead by just 2.3 points.
Well, it's going to be competitive right down to the end. Missouri races sometimes are like that.
Adding to interest in the race, concern over whether Donald Trump's growing divide with the Republican Party will hurt the GOP in Senate and congressional elections. Senator Blunt tells Fox he remains steady in his support for the GOP presidential nominee.
As long as the choice is Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I'm for Donald Trump.
Blunt says he is running for re-election to scrap Obamacare, improve America's foreign policy and relations, and to make sure a conservative judge is appointed to fill the empty seat on the Supreme Court. Kander says he is fighting for the working class.
Right to work is wrong for America and wrong for Missouri.
One of the hottest debates right now is whether the blue-collar state of Missouri will allow employees to opt out of union dues, the policy of right to work. But it's one of Cantor's attack ads that is garnering nationwide buzz and perhaps support from some conservatives.
In the Army, I learned how to use and respect my rifle.
It shows the veteran assembling a gun blindfolded while arguing the Second Amendment is also meant to keep guns out of the hands of terrorists and criminals.
Because I'd like to see Senator Blunt do this.
So far, there's only been one debate in this race. Cantor is demanding more. Blunt has not scheduled any, telling Fox he'd rather talk directly to the people. Brett?
Matt Finn in our Midwest Bureau. Matt, thank you. Voters in Florida have 6 more days to register. A federal judge today extended the deadline to October 18th because of Hurricane Matthew. Democratic lawmakers had asked Republican Governor Rick Scott to do it, but he refused, saying people had already had enough time to register. Getting people registered to vote in Indiana has become a criminal matter. Senior correspondent Eric Shawn reports on a massive investigation into alleged voter fraud in the Hoosier State.
Indiana State Police raided the group, the Indiana Voter Registration Project, in an investigation of alleged voter registration fraud that has grown to 56 counties. Officials say they discovered phony names, false addresses, and misleading information on some of the applications turned in by the group. The result, warns Indiana Secretary of State Connie Lawson, could be that some voters will be disenfranchised.
I'm worried about voter confidence in the system. You know, I want every voter in the state of Indiana to know that the vote that they cast will be counted and it won't be canceled out by someone committing fraud.
The allegations echo the scandal that took down Acorn, the activist group that flooded election offices across the country with fake voter registrations, starting with the 2008 presidential race. Scores of Acorn workers were eventually convicted. Some served jail time, and Acorn shut down its voter registration efforts. The group suspected in Indiana is actually run by the Washington, D.C.-based Patriot Majority USA, described by factcheck.org as having Democratic liberal leanings. In a statement, its president, Craig Verhoeven, blames state officials, saying in part, quote, "The raid is part of a partisan effort to rig the election by suppressing the rights of tens of thousands of African Americans to vote this November, an effort to deny 45,000 African Americans their right to vote." Lawson says the probe is not racially motivated.
We do not ask the question of race or ethnicity on our voter registration applications, and we are not discriminating against voters.
She says to be safe, voters should register themselves.
I would not use at this point in time a third party to register to vote. I would do it myself. Most people or groups that are doing these voter registration drives are doing the right thing, but it's too close to the election to take a chance.
Patriot Majority USA says it is nonpartisan and focuses on voter empowerment among other issues. Its website is attacking Mike Pence on the state's investigation. He is still the Indiana governor as well as Donald Trump's running mate. Brett.
Eric Shawn in New York. Eric, thank you. Eric will have another voter fraud story Sunday night on Special Report. It appears President Obama was not telling the truth when he said his administration had fired a whole bunch of people over the veterans' health scandal. Here's what the president said last month.
We have actually made progress. And again, I don't want to in any way pretend that we're where we need to be, but we have in fact fired a whole bunch of people who were in charge of some of these facilities.
But the Washington Post, factcheck.org, and our own checking here at Fox News has the number of senior executives fired since new legislation was crafted in 2014 between 1 and 6. Up next, a small plane crashes into a road near one of the biggest makers of military aircraft engines. So was it a failed terrorist attack? We have new details. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 29 in San Antonio, where the police chief is vowing disciplinary action against officers seen wearing Donald Trump campaign hats after escorting him to the airport Tuesday. City employees are prohibited from participating in political activity while on duty. A police union official says the officers got caught up in the moment. Fox 5 in Atlanta, as a 16-year-old is killed, apparently playing a game called Jump the Car. Police say Kobe Thomas was struck by a vehicle Friday and died from his injuries. The game involves jumping over a car as it approaches. And this is a live look at a rainy Chicago from our affiliate Fox 32. The big story there tonight, 2 gas company workers are injured in an explosion at a townhouse complex in suburban Romeoville. Village officials say the 2 were repairing a leak that had been reported early Tuesday afternoon. One of the workers is said to be in serious to critical condition. 2 townhouse units were destroyed. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.
Guess what, guys? I switched to Sprint.
Maybe a combination of using some kind of technology to jam their functions and actually physically shooting them down, which becomes increasingly critical as ISIS leverages its ability to weaponize them. Brett?
Shannon, thank you. Lawyers for the last surviving suspect in the November Paris attacks are quitting. Salah Abdeslam has refused to speak to protest the conditions of his detention. Authorities had hoped he would provide information about ISIS strategies and networks and identify others who may have played a part in the strikes that killed 130 people. An airstrike on one of the biggest market in rebel-held parts of Aleppo has left at least 15 people dead. It is just the latest attack in a massive Russian-backed Syrian offensive to regain control of that city. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott has an update on the fighting.
Buried underneath the rubble of another airstrike in Aleppo, a young boy is pulled out, dusty, shaken up, but alive. He's one of the lucky ones. The Syrian city is being pummeled by wave upon wave of Russian and Syrian airstrikes. At least 25 people killed today alone, many of them women and children. Over 40 killed yesterday.
We were sleeping when a warplane fired 2 missiles. Some people were taken to hospitals, others died.
Dramatic new drone video tells the tale of destruction. Anti-Assad government rebel-held East Aleppo hit hard. 275,000 people barely surviving. Hospitals, ambulances, doctors, emergency and aid workers targeted.
Anything that ends the massive violations that we see of human rights, this is something that we support.
At the Vatican today, Pope Francis reaffirmed his support for the victims of what he called an inhuman conflict.
It is with a sense of urgency that I renew my plea to beg with all my strength to those responsible to provide an immediate ceasefire.
This latest onslaught follows the breakdown of a U.S.-Russia brokered ceasefire last month. A UN Security Council resolution calling for a new pause to the fighting was vetoed just this past weekend by Russia. According to Vladimir Putin today, its purpose was simply
to exacerbate the situation and to whip up an anti-Russia hysteria.
And so the Russian-led airstrikes continue, with the aim, according to some experts, to drive everyone away, maybe overrun the city by the end of the year, with the Obama administration left mostly to simply protest.
That's deeply, deeply concerning. It's immoral, and it runs directly against the kinds of values that we hold dear in this country.
Secretary of State Kerry meets again on Saturday with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov and others to see what, if anything, can be done to stop the suffering in Syria. Brett.
Greg, thank you. It was a mixed day for the markets today. The Dow was up 16, the S&P 500 gained 2, the Nasdaq lost 8. The head man at scandal-plagued Wells Fargo is out. CEO John Stumpf is resigning effective immediately. The bank is embroiled in the fallout from the opening of millions of fake accounts under customer names. Wells Fargo has already agreed to pay $185 million in fines so far. North Carolina's governor is still urging residents in the flood zone left behind by Hurricane Matthew to evacuate. Authorities plan to go door to door in some areas, telling people to get to higher ground. They have closed one bridge over the swollen Tar River in Greenville and say several others may shut down.
If you're living below Woodlake Dam, you need to get out. And I understand there may still be people refusing that. We've had too many deaths. Get out.
Officials say at least 20 people have died from the storm in North Carolina so far. Flooding conditions in the area are expected to last until Friday. The American Navy warship, the USS Iwo Jima, is bringing badly needed help to Haiti. The hurricane there killed hundreds and has left at least 750,000 people desperately in need of assistance. The Iwo Jima brings hundreds of Marines and sailors, medical supplies and food, along with power generators, water purifiers, and bulldozers. More WikiLeaks Clinton campaign emails, some interesting things in there. More Trump campaigning ripping the press. We are just inside 4 weeks to go. The panel is next.
The press is hardly even talking about WikiLeaks. You know that. WikiLeaks is amazing, the stuff that's coming out. It shows she's a real liar. She said, well, you have to say to the public and you have to say to your donors different things, okay? The press doesn't even pick this stuff up.
The Russian interference in this election and their apparent attempt to influence it on behalf of Mr. Trump is, I think, should be of utmost concern to all Americans, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican.
Tough to hear him there. John Podesta talking about the hack on his email, saying it's a Russian operation and that the FBI is looking into it. There are a lot of things. There's another email dump this morning, 1,200 more. A couple of them raise some eyebrows. This is one in March 2015, an email chain from 3 Clinton staffers discussing a House subpoena of Secretary Clinton's emails, and this takes place roughly 3 weeks before a Clinton IT person uses that bleach bit to wipe her server clean. This is Philippe Reines, a longtime aide of Hillary Clinton. Rather than going around and around on how to release the 55,000 emails there, let's just be for what's happening and use this as the excuse. Because we can say even if state has equities, not providing them would put her in legal jeopardy. Or we can say happy for them to have it, happy for the public to read them as soon as state is comfortable. But let's somehow take advantage of this. Robbie Mook, now the campaign manager, responds, just for clarity, this House subpoena is just for Libya, right? We were discussing releasing everything. No. Cheryl Mills, longtime aide, former chief of staff, right to both. We'll start there, but there are a lot of emails to go through. Let's bring in our panel tonight. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today. And Tucker Carlson, host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Okay, Susan, you look at these emails. Obviously, everything the Democrats and the Clinton campaign are saying is to point to the Russia part of this. But on the substance of the emails, you know, this is 3 weeks, this one, before we learn that the server is wiped clean, but it's after the House issues the subpoena.
Yeah. You know, my husband, also a journalist, said this is like reading one of those post-campaign books, but during the campaign with all the stuff you do reporting about to try to get a hold of. This is it's very interesting to get inside their heads as they're trying to strategize how to handle this very difficult issue over and over again. And we were talking before, it's gotten less attention than you might think it ought to get, given how interesting it is. I don't see a huge bombshell here, but I agree that this is something that is like reading a novel. You need the kind of annotation, though, that you were just providing.
Yeah. I mean, part of the problem is you have to invest time to go through these things, and news organizations have to get off what's easy and go into what's hard. And that was actually part of the problem with the Benghazi story, too. Yeah. Steve, you had to tell the story every time you told it. All right, here's another one. The second one is this is about the efforts to FOIA Congress on the to get their emails in response to the calls for Hillary Clinton's emails. This again from Philippe Reines. I told HRC Hillary Clinton yesterday I was going to submit FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests to the Republicans on the committee and Utah Representative Jason Chaffetz, who's the chairman of the committee, to just trigger their offices sending me replies that Congress is exempt from FOIA and therefore they are rejecting my request. This is from Philippe Reines. Goes on to say that she loved the idea, just preferred it not come from me. They ended up, and I don't think it was Philippe who filed the FOIA, but they ended up filing it. Yeah. And these emails about Jason Chaffetz came out.
Yeah, and it was a story for a couple days saying that, isn't this ironic? Chafin Chaffetz is going through Hillary's emails and wants more of them, and his own emails aren't subject to FOIA. Look, I mean, I think the big takeaway on the email question is this. Hillary Clinton said all along that she was eager to have her emails out. She wanted people to read these emails. There was nothing nefarious. She wasn't hiding anything. In fact, if she had her way, she would have put even more emails out than what she was required to put out. Well, this obviously shows day by day, email by email, that was not true. And I think, look, for those of us who cover this on a day-to-day basis, we knew that wasn't true when she was saying it. But it is something a little different to be reading it this way and look at the lengths to which they went to set up obstacles to releasing new emails, to framing the release of new emails, to downplaying the thing. It's like you're seeing the inside of the campaign as the campaign itself is being created.
All right, this one is about Catholics and evangelicals. This is John Halpin to John Podesta and Jennifer Palmieri. Conservative Catholicism. Ken Aletta's latest piece on Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch, and the New Yorker starts off with the aside that both Murdoch and Robert Thompson, managing editor of the Wall Street Journal, are raising their kids Catholic. Frigging Murdoch baptized his kids in Jordan, where John the Baptist baptized Jesus. Many of the most powerful elements of the conservative movement are all Catholic, many converts. It's amazing bastardization of the faith. They must have be attracted to the systematic thought and severely backwards gender relations and must be totally unaware of Christian democracy. Jennifer Palmieri responds, I imagine they think it is the most socially acceptable, politically conservative religion. Their rich friends wouldn't understand if they became evangelicals. Tucker.
Well, this is infuriating on a whole bunch of different levels. I mean, for one thing, here you have two people, one of whom is the communications director for Hillary Clinton, maligning the world's largest religion, and nobody is covering it. I mean, and by the way, I'd say on the merits, Catholicism is backward in its view of gender relations compared to what? I mean, you can think of a couple other world religions that are far more retrograde on that question than anything the Catholic Church has ever come out with. If, by the way, the subject were Islam, I mean, the president would have a primetime press conference right now, urging all of us to sort of quell our Islamophobia.
Add a Republican's emails on Islam. And
what's so amazing is, like Steve, probably like Susan, I spend most of the day reading this stuff, and some of it kind of rocks you a little bit like this, some of it doesn't. All of it is really interesting, and none of it is being covered.
All right, first of all, I want to play some response from Father John and Raymond O'Rourke to this, and then I want to play Jen Palmieri's response.
To suggest that somebody is becoming Catholic or becoming a Christian and raising their children in the faith, why? For political purposes. That's not smart. That's not American. This isn't just anti-Catholicism. This is anti-American talk.
I think Catholics will get more enraged, and question marks will continue to hover above this campaign. What do they intend, and how do they think Catholics and evangelicals fit into America?
I'm a Catholic. I don't recognize that email that we saw, and this whole effort is led by the Russians. The Russians, ones that orchestrated this hack. We believe, as noted by the statement from the Director of National Intelligence, that they're also behind the timing and manner of the leaks, and we are not going to do any more to comment or aid their efforts.
Okay, Susan. So, I mean, how big a problem? Let's just imagine it was getting covered every place. How big a problem is this potentially for a campaign?
This particular exchange
issue, the Catholic
problem. You know, being respectful of other people's religion, it's a fundamental American tenet. It's an important thing, and there is a snarky tone to this exchange. And absolutely that's inappropriate. I would say that the most inappropriate language came not from Jennifer Palmieri, who's with the campaign, but from a guy who's with the Center for American Progress, a think tank. And also, I think it's interesting, she says she doesn't recognize this email because the Clinton campaign has refused to either confirm or deny the legitimacy of these emails.
At all. Like they won't go down to author, this one's real, this one's not real.
But in this case, she's saying she doesn't recognize it. That's not exactly a denial.
Is that good enough? I mean, shouldn't we be saying, wait a second, you don't recognize it? I mean,
I think that I think in the interest of transparency, they ought to say, yeah, these are emails and we'll discuss what was right and wrong about them. Or say, these are fabricated and we didn't
But
write
they're
it.
lying. I mean, it's just that clear. First of all, there's no proof that the Russians are behind this. Even if they are, no one is actually alleging.
Well, the U.S. intelligence community does say that, and they put that out.
They might be, but they don't have proof of it. But even if they are, there's no proof, and no one's even alleging that these are forgeries. That's the question. Is the data real? That's the first question you ask in journalism. Is it true? They're not even denying that, and they're getting a pass. You go to the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times right now, I couldn't find a single story about any of this. That's called suppression of the news. This is relevant.
I do want to follow up on something we brought up last night, and that was the email that involved Donna Brazile, then vice chair of the DNC. She was a CNN analyst. We showed you the email in which she said she got a question early. And she denied it, said she'd never provided a question to Hillary Clinton's campaign. CNN denied it. Today, Politico actually got a hold of another email that is exactly verbatim the question that was asked in the town hall. And CNN is now pointing to their partner, Roland Martin, with TV One. Bottom line is this is exactly the email that we were talking about last night, and it's the exact question asked.
Yeah. If the email's real, and if that happened, that's not how journalism is supposed to work. And that's an understatement. I mean, you can't provide questions to politicians before they come on your air to be tested by answering questions for the voters. So it would be sort of the breaking of the cardinal rule of journalism if that was the case. I mean, you can see that there's a distinction between what somebody like Donna Brazile, who was a contributor at CNN, does and is fundamentally a political person. I don't think she would deny that if she were sitting here with us. She wants her side to win, and what journalists do. But in my mind, that's no excuse if she in fact provided the questions to Hillary Clinton so that she could prep for them, create an answer for them, rehearse them, and present herself as if this is the first time she's hearing it.
I mean, in fact, said in the answer, that's such a difficult question.
Right.
Well, it's not. Actually, if you have the question the day before. We will go back and try to get a different follow-up on this with the additional Politico email. Next up, the balance of power in Congress and what the panel thinks of that.
I feel very confident that if the election were held today, we could win it all. But the election isn't today.
We'll work with whoever wins whatever office. Obviously, I think with the unified Republican government, we can get so much more done. I'm tired of divided government. It doesn't work very well. We're just at loggerheads.
We've got knockdown, drag out. It's sort of like a knife fight in a phone booth. New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois, Nevada, Indiana, Florida. We seem to have gotten some distance in Ohio, but everywhere else it could go either way.
Didn't say North Carolina there, but it's there. House Representatives balance of power, there you see it. Democrats need 30 seats, as we showed you earlier. Senate balance of power, you have 54-46, and there are some tight races. We're back with the panel. We asked each panelist to choose a state that's of interest, either in the Senate races or House races or the presidential. Steve, you're first.
Yeah, mine was North Carolina, which might have been a better state to pick about 2 weeks ago when things looked like it was potentially going to be more competitive there. Right now, if you look at the presidential race, Hillary Clinton is up 2.6%, 2.6 points in the Real Clear Politics average, and things seem to be trending in her direction. You talk to people in the states after this Trump tape, and everything seems to be moving in her direction. The Senate race there, Richard Burr, who's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, has been very active on Veterans Affairs. North Carolina is a huge veterans community. Was thought to have been a pretty safe Republican seat. He led every single poll into August and then started having more competitive polling in August. His opponent, Deborah Ross, head of the ACLU in North Carolina, overtook him in some of those polls. And although Mitch McConnell didn't mention it there, that's a basically dead even race. And if you talk to Republicans across the state who are monitoring the polling, the daily polling, taking place in Senate races, battleground states across the country, they've seen anywhere between an 8 and 10 point drop in these races.
Yeah, and we're talking recent days it has shifted. Susan, your state?
The answer to this question is always Florida, because Trump needs it if he's going to win. Hillary, that's been very close. Hillary Clinton's doing a little better there. The Senate race, which we thought Rubio was going to be in good shape in, it's very close. It's like a 2-point race now, even against a Democratic candidate. It's not considered that strong, Pat Murphy. 24 of the 27 congressional districts were redrawn under orders by the Florida Supreme Court. That has scrambled things in the House races in a way that we don't see in very many states. We don't know that Democrats will pick up a lot of seats. They're poised to pick up maybe net of 1. But if you have a tidal wave kind of election, those are the kind of districts with new people running and with new areas that could really go big.
All right, quickly, your state.
Maine's not likely to affect the outcome of the election, but it tells you a lot about what the parties are going to look like when it's done. Largest congressional district east of the Mississippi, the 2nd district of Maine. It's all factories and farms. Typically, for the last 6 elections, the whole state has gone Democrat. Those are Democratic constituencies, factory workers, farmers. That's going to go Donald Trump. It's one of only 2 states that splits its electoral votes. But it tells you that when the smoke clears, the Republican Party is going to look a lot different in its composition from what we've seen for the last generation or 2.
We got through it. Panel, thank you. That's it for the panel, but stay tuned for a little bad lip reading of the first presidential debate.
Well, yeah, I can do that.